Hello and welcome to the big picture. The UPA government seems to be on the horns of a dilemma. Having failed to get some crucial legislations passed in the last parliament session, which incidentally was the last session of the 15th Lok Sabha, it is contemplating the ordinance route for at least some of them. However, it seems to be facing both legal and political hurdles in getting them passed. The Union Cabinet, which was expected to clear some of these legislations today to be promulgated as ordinances, were deferred. While questions are being raised about the ethicality of promulgating ordinances during its last days in power, UPA government is also under pressure from various groups to go ahead with it. Today we will discuss the ethical, legal and political issues involved in taking the ordinance route and whether it can be justified or it should be put off for the new government. To discuss this, I have with me Prakash Javadekar, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Salman, Congress Spokesperson, Tapan, CPIM MP in the Rajya Sabha, Anjali Bhardwaj, Secretary of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, and Vinod Sharma, Political Editor at Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Javadekar, I would like to come to you first. Would your party have any objections if the government goes ahead and promulgates some of these ordinances at least?
This is our demand, and we are asking now government why it did not bring it for 9 years. And second, last 3 sessions were wasted by their Congress own MPs. So Congress needs to explain why their MPs made such nasty scenes, why they didn't allow House to function, and why Congress could not rein them in. Now, you can't have cake and eat it too. You will disturb the House, and now you will want to create an image that you are something really against corruption. If you would have really intention of fighting against corruption, then you would not have done 2G in first place, not allowed CWG. You would have allowed Sunil Datta to be there. You would not have. You sent the whistleblowers, 3 MPs into jail. Court has said reinvestigate. You are not reinvestigating. So laws in words is one thing. Laws enforcement with real political will is another thing, which is completely absent in the Congress.
You have not answered my question, Mr. Javadekar.
I answered your question.
Will you not have a problem if they promulgate ordinances?
No, why we shall?
You should not. You will not have a problem. You will not have a problem.
No, why we will have a problem?
Okay. Tapan, you think the government would be justified in promulgating some of these ordinances which they are planning to?
Ordinance is never a preferred route for in a democratic political system. It is never a preferred route. It should have been passed in the parliament. There were ample opportunities and ample time left. 3 sessions was spoiled because of the ruling party's own problem, and that's why they have landed in that kind of a situation. Now, even at all, some ordinance are issued by them that was under compulsion of a situation that reflects their failure to get it passed in the parliament. And if something has come as ordinance, some of the legislation which are important, which we are also supporting. But the thing is that in ordinance route, there are many issues which parliament should have intervened to make those bill in proper order. There are certain amendments that are required. Those will not be there if that goes through the ordinance. Right. So, ordinance practically make a particular pattern of the bill a fait accompli. So, that way it is never a preferred route. And now, if at all some ordinance might have come on certain important urgent issues, that reflect the failure of the ruling party, the governance itself.
Salman, does it reflect the failure of the government in getting these bills passed? Some of them which have been pending for several years, in fact. They have not been able to get the bill passed, and now this last minute attempt to get it passed through the ordinance route, which is really not, in ethical terms, when the government is in the last days of its in power to do this.
The opposition will obviously say all these things. They have been trying to mislead the nation for a long, long time. As Mr. Javadekar said, and it is correct that in the last couple of sessions, Because of the very emotional issue of Telangana, there were disruptions, including by our members of parliament and also by some other members of parliament that the BJP is actually cozying up with.
No, not
so it was a divisive issue, but this is not the real stalling of parliament did not happen in the last couple of sessions. The real stalling of parliament has happened in 2011 and 2012. And you can go through newspaper reports, as I do frequently, and you can see how vociferously and BJP stalled parliamentary kind of work time and time again. And it is no doubt that that is because of these kinds of issues, these kinds of stalling kind of mechanisms, that the BJP, that this Lok Sabha has been described as one of the least productive.
Why you did
so
not
now it's very
call
easy for them
parliament
to say that
session
you
for
didn't do
100
this
days?
so many years back.
Salman
but the facts on the ground say that these people did not let a lot of the legislative work occur.
नाच न जाने अंगर टेढ़ा.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Mr. Soos, let me give you a couple of instances of here. The Prevention of Bribery of Foreign Public Officials and Officials of Public International Organizations Bill 2011. The Lok Sabha, it was introduced in the Lok Sabha on 25th March 2011. Standing Committee report was received on March 29, 2012, a year later. Now we are in February 2014. You had nearly 2 years to get this bill passed. Now that, it was introduced in the Lok Sabha, the bill has lapsed. Similarly, the right of citizens for time-bound delivery of goods and services and redressal of their grievances bill 2011. Lok Sabha, it was introduced in Lok Sabha on December 28, 2011. The Standing Committee report was received on August 28, 2011. Again, the bill has not been passed, so it has again lapsed. Do you say that in the last 2 years, the government was unable to get these bills passed, which are now being touted as some of the most important legislations which your leader wants it to be passed? Doesn't this show the kind of, the way in which the government has been able to manage the parliament?
Sorry, are you asking me? Because I was
Yes, Salman, I'm asking you.
Okay. All right. So, look, I think the facts are in front of you as well. You can do your own research. People sitting at home can actually see exactly how Parliament has been disrupted for a couple of years now. So, like I said earlier, I don't know whether you heard what I was saying about how this Parliament has been among the least productive. And, and a large part of the blame goes to the opposition, especially the BJP. Now, we did get several important pieces of legislation done, and yes, thanks to the BJP as well at times when we really had to get some really important work done, like the Lokpal bill, where we did get support, or the Telangana bill, where we did get support from the BJP. But for these kinds of things, which are actually in the national interest, these kinds of bills on anti-corruption measures, and there's 5 or 6 very important pieces of legislation, we could have gotten it done too. But I think the fact is that these people are playing politics. That's what they care more about than the nation. If they were so interested in anti-corruption measures, then why did they have they provided even a shred of proof? For example, in the Spectrum case, why do you think rates in India, mobile phone rates in India, are among the lowest in the world?
Let us not get into the mobile roads business. Let's not get into this. Let's not get into.
Now, by the way, who's the Prime Minister who said that we should auction things in the future?
Salman, let us not get into that.
Really played both.
Let's not get into that territory now.
That's what I feel is going wrong with the BJP.
Salman, let's not get into that territory now. Let me get Anjali in on this. Anjali, you people have been fighting very hard to get some of these legislations passed, and now that, are you comfortable with the fact that these have to be passed in the form of ordinances?
Well, let me say that I agree with some of the previous speakers. The ordinance route is the least preferred route in a parliamentary democracy. Even for groups like the NCPRI, the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, who have been demanding that the Whistleblowers Protection Bill, the Grievance Redress Bill, which are going to impact every citizen of this country, we've been saying these bills should be passed. Very patiently, these bills have been drafted, developed with with people in the parliament, members of parliament, in the standing committee. There have been large-scale deliberations on these. And we've had a draft in the parliament which is actually very good on these legislations. The Grievance Redress Bill is a very good draft. And the standing committee report, which was an all-party standing committee, deliberated very nicely on it and has given very, very good suggestions. Now, the problem is that despite several sessions of parliament, like you yourself said, this particular bill came in 2011. Let me give go back a little bit further. 1960s was the Administrative Reforms Committee which said there should be a grievance redress mechanism. From then, the government has been deliberating on it, citizens groups have been deliberating on it. 2011, there was a sense of house resolution. The parliament promised the people of the country that a citizens' charter grievance redress bill will be given to the people. We have been reminding the parliament, every session of parliament, sitting at Jantar Mantar, talking to all political parties, saying that this bill should be brought in. Unfortunately, we have seen that the parliament has now adjourned, it's been prorogued, and even now the bill is not here. This bill not being passed actually impacts every citizen. There are people who have to go without their rations, there are people who have to go without their pensions, people who have to go without medicines, because when they complain, there is no system for redress. So what we are simply saying is that we were really hoping and requesting to every political party that it should be debated and passed by parliament. All political parties, Mr. Javadekar is here, Mr. Tapan Sen is here, the Congress, everybody said that we support this bill. Why has this bill not been passed? Now, the simple reason, Girish, is that the parliament is not functioning. Now, to me, that is a huge concern, because when we say that the ordinances are to be passed only in a state of some emergency, I would say that this is probably the worst scenario in a parliamentary democracy, where bills lapse because parliament is just not functioning. So for us, it's a least preferred route, but we don't think that this bill now, which has lapsed incidentally, should be allowed to just go away, just because our parliament is not being able to deliver to the people of this country these basic human rights legislation.
Mr. Javadekar, one thing. You can react. Let me say one thing. The fact is that all political parties, that I have also been following these the way these bills have been stalled, and I've also been following what people like Anjali and her and similar civil society groups have been putting pressure on all the political parties. All of you agree, but there is no sign of you people coming together on bills like this, which should be above politics, But politics has been played on everything in the last few sessions that we have witnessed, which is really tragic.
First, let us discuss these two bills.
Yes.
What is the status today?
Lapsed.
Whistleblower? No, not.
Not the whistleblower.
1 minute. Whistleblower bill, we passed without even government amendments, only to ensure that this doesn't get lapsed.
Right.
This is a reflection on government's inefficiency.
This was...
And Anjali, 1 minute. Anjali knows it. See, the issue was very clear. Whistleblower, nobody was objecting.
Right.
On the other hand, people gave very proactive amendments.
Right.
This, the Parliamentary Standing Committee gave, on which government also accepted many recommendations and moved official amendments.
Right.
So the bill with as amended was to be passed.
Right.
We were ready to pass as is amended. But then that day we were told, if we pass as is amended, that is the right bill, then, so perfect bill if would have passed, it would have lapsed, because there is no Lok Sabha to go back. So we passed an imperfect law.
Right.
Knowing fully well, just with the intention, that shows a willingness of the political parties to walk extra mile just to keep that momentum of the bill, A. But it is essential responsibility to the government. I cannot introduce the bill, government bill.
There's no
yes,
doubt.
1 minute. I moved a private member bill.
Yes.
To bribery, against the bribery of in the private sector.
Right.
But that doesn't make difference. That doesn't make official bill.
Okay.
So official act will come only if the bill, and that is the government's responsibility. We wanted 100-day session, they never made it. Salman was raising a 1 minute. Let me also tell you, 11 and 12, the 2 sessions which were lost, 2 sessions, not 6. Out of 6, only 2 were lost, and all the opposition parties, including their own supporting party, were demanding JPC on 2G.
Yes,
Government refused adamantly.
No,
and
that is well
next
known.
Session,
That is well
next
known.
session,
That's,
first day,
okay.
they accepted. So he is responsible.
Okay.
So it is
Vinod,
a comprehensive failure of the government. As far as the public grievance is concerned, our state governments have passed, and we are very happy with the experiment. That has brought a complete cultural change in the office working.
But the problem is
Congress members in the well.
That is the problem.
Congress
that you blame them, they blame you.
Government, no, they can't blame us. We were not in the well, and government never listed these bills, which are good for the public.
Let me get Vinod in on this. Vinod, how do you look at this? And do you think now that the President of India, who will ultimately have to promulgate these ordinances, he is really faced with a situation where he will have to apply his mind on whether these ordinances needs to be passed in such circumstances when the government is on its way out?
Well, the final word would be coming from the President, and if the President returns these ordinances back to the government, I don't think this government will have the courage to send it back to him again. But I wonder whether that will happen. These are legislations for which there have been huge demands. Yes, of course, they are imperfect because they have not been adequately debated. But I want to raise a broader issue.
Yes.
I wonder whether it is prudent to introduce such legislations in the lower house, even when the given session or given parliament is in its early stages. I think such bills on which there is a logjam or on which political parties are trying to rob the ruling party of brownie points, of talking points, they should be introduced in the upper house so that they don't lapse. For the simple reason, like the way the Women's Reservation Bill was introduced in the upper house.
Yes.
And had these bills been pending in the upper house, I think the legitimacy of the ordinance would have been greater. For the simple reason that these houses, the bills in the upper house would have remained on the legislative agenda.
Right.
Now, in this case, it seems that the outgoing government is forcing a legislative agenda on the new house.
Right.
So that is the point of propriety on which there is some debate.
Absolutely.
You see, you get my point.
Absolutely.
So this is where I think collectively all political parties must come to a decision. I accuse all of them of failure to pass these legislations. Yes, we can go into the nitty-gritty. Primary responsibility is that of the government to bring the business before the house, but it takes two to tango.
Absolutely.
So the opposition, unless there is cooperation by the opposition, unless the opposition is proactively involved, even the Telangana legislation, which has been passed, is an imperfect legislation.
Absolutely.
Because there is a constitutional issue involved there. But it was decided that, okay, let's ignore it, let's pass this because this is important. So political parties are politically expedient and they do everything for votes. And these legislations are going to decide votes. So if the ordinance is passed and the President gives the approval, I don't think anybody will oppose it. But grave questions shall remain about their propriety. Grave questions shall remain whether we are actually devaluing parliamentary democracy by getting legislations passed outside the sphere of parliament and then leaving it to the new house to take a view on it.
Absolutely.
And I do not know whether the new house will pass it or not.
Yeah, that is
because then the stalling will be done by the opposition, the then current opposition,
Right, right. Yes, I'll come to you, Salman. Before that, Anjali, you want to react? You want to say something on this? Then I'll let me go to Salman and I'll come back to you. Salman, yes.
Girish, I am also here.
I'll come to you, Tapan.
By the way,
Salman wanted to react. I'll come to you.
But
yes.
I want to. I want to raise the basic issues.
Yes, please, Salman. Let's Tapan finish. I'll come back to you. Yes, Tapan.
Actually, I want to make one thing is that I question the real intention about behind this the whole thing that has happened. Mr. Salman told there are real stalling and I don't know whether stalling has got a definition, that whether real stalling and unreal stalling. Practically last 4 sessions
Yes.
were stalled by the ruling party or their allies or those political groups who bailed out ruling party on all crucial occasions. They are the groups who are stalling this house. Ruling party has to own the responsibility. Secondly, the question of intention arises, what are the bill you are listing, Girish?
Yes.
You just go through the list of business during last 4 sessions. How many days those bills were listed for business? How many days? And that is the prime responsibility of the ruling side. In the Business Advisory Committee, as per their proposition, the list of business, legislative business was prepared. How many days? Somebody should go and scrutinize. Those list of business of both the House, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are available in website. You please go through it. How many days it has been listed? And on those days, who are the persons who stalled the House and for what reasons? Where there are issues, where there are class interests involved, like banking privatization, like pension regulatory authority bill, they go out of the way and the bill got passed when the government and the principal opposition join hands.
Right. Okay.
So, where there are corporate interests, where there are commercial interests of the big business houses, all those controversial issues, Mia Bibi ek ho jata hai, pass ho jata hai.
Okay.
So, and these basic
No, you
people
have-
issues, on that all kinds of politics
I
are being
take your
played.
point. I take your
So
point.
that is
like
the
to-
issue.
I like to
I take
react
your
to
point, Tapan. Vinod, I'll come to you. Salman, yes, please. Salman Soos, now you please react.
On both points. I mean,
Yes.
let me just, yes. By the way, I mean, the last several sessions were disturbed by members, including of the Congress party. But please remember that this Telangana is not a regular kind of issue. It is a very emotional issue. And we ourselves do not want the House to be disturbed. We wanted this bill to be passed. It wasn't as if we didn't want it to be passed. We wanted it to be passed. And by the way, it is not correct to state that, oh, these two parties get together only when the commercial interests are kind of at hand. We have to remember that the Food Security Act was passed and the Land Reforms Act was passed, and many people in the corporate sector were not very happy. We keep getting slammed by everybody about how we are subsidizing everything and this thing and that thing. So those are not commercial interests, by the way. Now, on the issue of ordinance and is this proper to do it right now?
No,
I would suggest the following.
Yes.
No, please, let me just finish.
Okay.
Let me finish on the issue of ordinances.
Okay.
The thing is that, as I think Ms. Bhardwaj also said, and I don't, because my connection wasn't good, I don't know what Mr. Javadekar said, but these types of legislation, say the Grievance Redressal or the Whistleblower, I think there is political consensus that we need these things to be done. I don't see how the next parliament is going to say we're not going to do these bills. So if right now, I would kind of say to the BJP and other political parties, let us all agree that we'll send these things for an ordinance, get the ordinance done, and then the next parliament takes it up. What's the problem with that?
The point which you have made is important.
Is anyone right now, is there
the
anyone,
point you have made is important.
is
Salman,
anyone
I'll
right now
come
going
back
to say
to
that let's not do these things?
No, I'll come back to that. You have made an important point. Yes, Vinod, very quickly before I go to Anjali. Vinod?
Before me.
Yes, I'll come to you, Mr.
Yeah,
Javadekar.
listen, I'm quite, at times I really marvel at the hypocrisy of some of the political parties, They take a very, they're very indignant about what's happening around them. Then this is self-righteous indignation. If you look at the Jan Lokpal bill, which has been passed by our parliament, this bill gives a certain time frame and the liberty to the state governments to have lokayuktas of their liking.
Right.
And now we see in Karnataka and in Gujarat what kind of lokayuktas have come. Now, when it comes to fighting corruption at the level where they are ruling, some of the regional parties, they want to have a lokayukta of their liking. And they think that there should not be a universal law applied against corruption across the country.
Okay.
They think that this is a federal question. I mean, it's not a law and order issue that it's a federal question.
Right, Vinod,
Is fighting corruption a law and order issue?
No, Vinod, I think I got, your point is well taken. Yes, Anjali.
Well,
Let me first say that I think the objective data is there for everybody to see. The 15th Lok Sabha has been one of the worst, in fact, the worst performing, performing Lok Sabha in the history of our independent nation. And I think, I agree with what has been said earlier, that where there is political will, whether it is the Whistleblowers Protection Law or the Food Security Law, yes, we have seen that parties have come together, they have risen above party lines, and they have passed some significant legislations. Now, what we needed was much more of that, because any Lok Sabha has several human rights, other important legislations which need to be passed. Of course, some of these got passed, but there are many that haven't, and including bills like the Grievance Redress, which have now fallen by the wayside. We know what it takes to get a bill back into legislative business. Something like the land acquisition law, once it lapsed, it took us more than 3 years to get it back into the agenda.
And look at the state of women's
reservation. The only one little other thing which I want to say is that in the ordinance route, again, the struggle for people like us is not going to end with an ordinance. What we really believe is that the Parliament must debate this and get proper amendments. Like Mr. Javadekar said, right now the Whistleblowers Bill, because it was taken up at the last minute in the Parliament, literally, it has gone through, but with serious shortcomings.
With very serious yes. Yes, Mr. Javadekar, quickly.
Just 2 sentences.
Yes.
One is that ordinance route to be taken is not the prerogative of the opposition parties.
It's not, certainly not.
Ruling party, 1 minute, ruling party, instead of asking us something, should really take informal view of the president, because he has to give assent. Otherwise, you will be showing that you have done it, but president has returned, and that's the issue. So you have to be a little political intelligent and do the due diligence before you promulgate it.
I'm sure that Salman says, I have one question, you can react, but before that I have one question. Do you think that the government is now going through the process of consulting the opposition parties also? Because as Vinod Sharma rightly pointed out, there is always a danger that the next parliament, under a new government, if there is a new government in the next parliament, these bills can lapse, these bills can face problems. So don't you think that it is essential that the government even consults the opposition parties even at this stage before promulgating an ordinance? Apart from, of course, as Javadekar suggests, informally consulting the president.
Frankly, I think not just consultations, but actually the leader of the opposition could go along with the Congress representative, meet the president informally and say, this is something that all of us would want to do anyway. Give us a bridge from here to the next parliament, and then we'll take it to the parliament.
Salman, your suggestion, I mean, your good intention suggestion is well taken, but in this kind of a political atmosphere, we don't know whether that utopian
president will not allow this meeting. You must understand.
You know,
you want to take informal consultation with the president.
If the opposition and the ruling party, if we all go together, I don't think the president would say no.
It is the ruling party and the president.
Okay. Tapan, last word.
But if the president knew that the opposition is with the ruling party, it'd be okay. This is for the people of the country.
1 second. Tapan, last words to you very quickly.
Yes, same thing. It is all depends on the real political intention.
Okay,
I can again cite an example. Women reservation bill was passed by Rajya Sabha in 2011.
Correct.
And thereafter, it was never listed in the Lok Sabha.
Absolutely.
And now you will be, if you come with an ordinance, is it not a hypocrisy? But after all, we are being governed by hypocrites. We have to accept that. Let us go ahead with that.
Vinod pointed that out earlier, and
look at the fate of the GST.
I suppose it applies to all political parties.
And also,
I think we are completely run out of
direct tax code.
Okay,
Mr. Modi is now promising that he will have it done. He did not help when it was sought to be done after Chidambaram mooted it.
Okay, Vinod, we are completely run out of time. We are completely run out of time.
Madhya Pradesh were two governments which opposed it.
Okay, Vinod, we are completely run out of time. We will wait and watch. Today, the cabinet was supposed to take a decision. It has been deferred. We will wait and see when and if the cabinet will take it up and suggest these ordinances to the president. But as everybody here pointed out, it is not something which is a very happy situation to be promulgating ordinances, but some of these ordinances may become inevitable and desirable. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Prakash Javadekar, Salman, Tapan, Vinod, Sharma, and Anjali Bhardwaj. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.